All right, everybody, thank you again for coming to our monthly journal club. And this month, we have Kalyn Rogers joining us for a pretty cool topic. I'm super excited. So Kalyn is the founder and the executive director of Upward Inertia, and she's an occupational therapist. She has experience working in neuro rehab and pediatrics. She's trained extensively in therapeutic yoga, various forms of massage and energy work, mindfulness practices, and a variety of movement practices. She has developed a curriculum to provide mind-body-based interventions for inmates in Idaho prisons, for individuals managing mental illness or addiction, and for healthcare providers as a method of burnout prevention. So I thought she had a wealth of knowledge, and it really tied into what we talked about last month, but is super relevant for just the world we are in right now and what healthcare providers are facing, what individual people are facing, and then it fits in occupational therapy perfectly. So thank you, Kalyn, for joining us. I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you for having me and for being here for all the participants. This is going to be very interactive. I don't want it to be me like talking at you. But the way that I designed my presentations in general, especially for healthcare providers, is this is something that's for you and also that you can use with your patients. So really take from this what's going to work for you today. If you're just like, gosh, I'm burnt out, I don't want any other tools for my toolbox, I just want to know how to take care of me, that's perfect. If you're like, this isn't for me, but I have patients who would love it, that's great too. So I just want to start by asking you, like, when I say the word yoga, what do you envision in your head? What is the purpose of it? Who's it for? Why do people do it? What pops into your head?
For me, it's something I've always thought, I'm going to do that. And I think of stretching and breathing, and I know it would be good for me, but I just haven't ever gotten there yet.
Okay.
And I think similarly of, I need to be better at stress management and probably balancing flexibility and whatnot physically. But I always think of like, if I'm stressed or if I'm out of whack, I think of that would be something I should be doing to kind of keep my homeostasis. But it is the first thing that gets pushed to the back burner.
Any other thoughts about what yoga is?
For me, it's always been a combination of stress relief and just overall fitness. I made sure to take a yoga class or Pilates class throughout grad school.
Oh, good.
And I think that helped me survive.
I agree with you there. All right. So something I really liked about your answers is that all of you kind of honed in on that mental health part of it. I feel like many people seem to hear yoga and think like skinny white lady putting her foot behind her head, because that's what like pop culture shows us, right? And so many people view yoga as this like practice that's all about the physical body. And yoga really in its essence is so much more than that. So way back when yoga started, it wasn't even a physical practice. It really was in the beginning just breathing and mindfulness. And then now we have what's called the 8 limbs of yoga, and they are all pieces of the puzzle that are meant to bring us into balance. So the yamas and the niyamas are like practices, ways of existing in the world, living with nonviolence, with truthfulness, non-stealing, having daily rituals, having cleanliness practices. All of those are part of yoga. And then there's the asana, the asana. We have a gym in town called Asana, and now I say it wrong every time. But the asana, which is the movement practice. And so that is what is really more tied to Western culture, is those poses, that physical practice, moving your body, getting more flexible, getting stronger. And then there's the pranayama, which is literally controlling the breath. So your breath is your life force energy. And in yoga, we really try to learn how to control our breath, to breathe with purpose, to breathe with intention, to pair our breath with our movement. And then pratyahara is the withdrawal of the senses. So going inside, what do we feel? What are our patterns and our habits, and how do we exist in this world? And then dharana and dhyana go hand in hand. One is concentration and one is meditation. And most people really truly do concentration practices, not meditation, because meditation is just like quiet, where concentration practices would be, you know, focusing on your breath, doing color visualization, staring at a candle. They're much more accessible. So I very rarely tell people to just straight up meditate, because most of us don't have the ability to just sit in silence. Whereas if we have something to focus on, we can really learn to control our thoughts. So all of these limbs are there to help us tap into a different part of our person, whether it's our mind, our thought patterns, whether it's the breath and the nervous system or the physical body. These all go hand in hand. And I really believe that when we start to learn these practices, we can use them in our daily life to manage our stress, to manage our anxiety, to change our habits and patterns, our reactions, and to just become a healthier being overall. So the first thing that I want to touch on is the breath, because I think the breath is the most important. The breath is our superpower. If you learn to control your breath, you can actually control your nervous system. So this is the only part of the nervous system that we have direct control over. Like, yes, you can run and make your heart beat faster, but you can't then like slow it down by walking slowly, right? You have to give it time and it'll do it on its own. The breath is directly tied into the central nervous system, and it essentially creates a feedback loop. So what happens when you get stressed out or scared or angry? What happens to your breath? You can unmute yourself if you want to answer.
I was just demonstrating. Tight and restricted.
Yeah, so it usually becomes really shallow, really short, probably pretty quick. And what that actually does is then it sends a signal to your body like, hey, we need to panic. Something is happening. And then you go into fight or flight mode. And then fight or flight mode makes your breath even more short and shallow. And so it's this feedback loop. And in order to get out of it, we have to learn how to slow our breath down. And the first step of that is just noticing, like, how many people we talk to are breathing and they have no idea. They don't notice that, you know, they're getting stressed, they're tightening their muscles, they're breathing shallow. So that first step is just like knowing your body and being able to say like, oh, my breath is really pretty short right now. And then once we have that, learning, there's a couple different breaths that I want to teach you that are really meant to bring the body back into a relaxed state and turn off fight or flight. So the easiest one is just in for 4 and out for 6. When you breathe out for longer than you breathe in, it tells the body that it's okay to relax. And so I want you to sit and put your hands just below your rib cage. And when you breathe in, let the breath go all the way down into the abdomen. So your abdomen is going to fill up like a balloon. You may look like you have a belly, and that's perfect. You want that to happen because that means you're really expanding your diaphragm. So take a deep breath in and feel it go all the way down. And then as you exhale, see if you can make it last for 6 counts as you breathe out. And inhale. Exhale. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So do this a couple more times. If it feels right to you, close your eyes and just notice what happens in the body as you're doing this slow, full breath. And if it feels right, you can even extend the exhale longer. Just always making sure that the exhale is longer than the inhale. noticing what happens to your heartbeat, noticing what happens to the musculature, even your thoughts. And when you're ready, allowing your eyes to open and just checking in with yourself. And if any of you want to share about your experience, I'd love to hear. I know that was a quick breathing experience, but hopefully you felt something from it.
I always, with breathing like that, I struggle because I get discoordinated and I start breathing out as I'm supposed to be finishing breathing out, in and out. And then my mind starts freaking out because I need to still be breathing in when I'm supposed to be breathing out, or whatever. It's almost more stressful.
Okay. So this is definitely something that we'll touch on later down the road, but the biggest thing that I like to impart to students is you're not doing anything wrong. So if you are struggling to stay with that pace, that's okay. That's your body telling you something. So, what can you change? Can you make it in for 2 and out for 4? Can you just do in for 4, out for 4? Do you want to just lay there and feel your breath without any expectation and see what happens? Because really, there is no wrong way to do yoga. There's just different moments, and how we act in those different moments is going to help us in a different way. So I would say, notice that pattern of oh, you're doing this wrong. And what can you say to yourself in those moments? How can you, cheer yourself on or let go of expectations? The other thing that might be really helpful if you had a hard time with this is do it laying down. So if you lay down on your back, your breath will naturally go into your diaphragm. It will naturally be deeper. And so if you're having trouble coordinating that inhale to expand the belly, that's a great way to start. Did anybody else have any different experience with the breathing? And I'm totally listening, but I'm going to go turn a light on because I just realized it's getting really dark on my screen.
I know for me, I'm a runner and my breathing is a challenge because I feel like I get restricted. And so I've been trying to work on my breathing. So whenever I've done things like this, I feel like I can do it for so long. And then it's like I have to catch up and get to normal breathing. But I have, I have noticed over time as I practice, I can feel the softening and the greater expansion, a longer release. But I feel like the expansion part is, it's can only get so much. And then am I keeping it shallow, getting it to the right place? I've been told that I breathe wrong, but anyway, that's me. But
I'd be interested to see if you practice this more, if you actually start using this breathing when you're running.
Because I saw a pelvic floor therapist actually, and she was teaching me about core engagement and how my breath control works with that. And I would try to do it when I was running and just had to it's like patting my head and rubbing my belly or, whatever. So I know I need practice because I know practice helps.
Yes.
And I value when I do it, but it's really hard to integrate is what I've felt.
Yeah. So this type of breath should be very relaxing. Obviously, if you're feeling like you're not doing it right, or you're knocked out of your zone, that's going to be a little bit harder. But I would recommend just start every day with 2 minutes of this deep breathing. And then maybe find, a couple minutes after work or before bed to do it again. And just notice how that changes everything. For me personally, when I do this, I notice the tension in my neck and my shoulders kind of melts away. My mind just becomes quieter. I even notice a lot of times the tension in my face, most of us grit our teeth together and squinch our eyes. We just have tension in our face all the time. And when I do this deep breathing, that goes away. And the really great thing about this breathing pattern is you can use it at any moment. So if you're in a patient's room and they are screaming at you and you feel yourself getting tense and fired up, you can breathe right there. You can control your breath and they have no idea. So this is a really great tool to use in any situation. And this is the same breath that I teach to the kids that I work with who have a pretty hard time regulating their emotions. You know, it's simple. It's just count to 4, count to 6, or count to 3, count to 4, whatever feels right for your body. So if you leave here with nothing else, exhale for longer than you inhale and it'll calm you down. Okay. So there's 2 other breaths that I want to leave with you. 3, sorry. One of them is called square breathing. It's very similar to what we just did, except that you suspend the breath for the same amount of time in the middle. So you would breathe in for 4, hold for 4, and then exhale for 4. And that breath I don't use as often because the holding for 4 causes a lot of panic in some people. And obviously, if we're trying to calm the body, then panicking is not ideal. Also, it could be contraindicated for certain conditions, like if somebody has had a stroke, we don't generally want them holding their breath. There's not like a consistent consensus on that, but I just generally don't use it because I don't feel like it has huge benefits over the 4x6. And so I always just go with the easier one for patients. But in my own practice, sometimes it is really nice to do in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, because it just changes things a little bit. So alternate nostril breathing is a great one. And I want you to all try this. So put your thumb on your nostril and point your pointer finger to the side. Take a deep breath in, hold it and switch nostrils, and then exhale. Inhale, suspend the breath and switch nostrils, and exhale. Inhale, hold to switch, and exhale. Inhale, hold and switch. Exhale. Continuing this breath, maybe changing the pace for yourself, but just noticing if one side is different than the other, noticing if the air flows freely, noticing your thoughts. Do you have expectations or judgments of yourself? And can you just sit with this breath, observing without judgment for another minute or 2? Closing the eyes if that feels right for you. And going through a couple more rounds until you feel ready. And when you feel ready, releasing the hand and then taking a few full breaths before you open your eyes and come back to your alert state of being. If anyone wants to share about their experience with that one, how it was different, what they liked or didn't like, please feel free to unmute yourself.
It required a lot of thinking for me as far as what I was supposed to be doing and what I needed to do next. And so it was kind of, I'm sure that comes with practice, but as a first time doing that, it was a little distracting, I guess.
And it might be less distracting, or it might just feel a little easier if you have somebody talking the whole time. I wanted to give you guys a chance to just like feel it without me, saying inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. But a recording could be helpful. But I also think there's nothing wrong with, thinking in 2, 3, 4, switch out, like there's plenty of times where I still count the breath. So don't feel like that's like not the right way to do it.
I felt like it almost, to me, it seemed easier as far as like getting a full breath. It was interesting too, especially afterwards, where I felt like when I finally took a breath in with both nostrils, it was like both of them are now working to a more full capacity, where it was almost like a good setup for more complete breathing. I don't know, that's how I felt.
Yeah. Usually, depending like what time of day you do this, you'll notice one nostril feels like harder to breathe through than the other one, and it's constantly changing. It has to do with a million different things. So that is really fun always to just kind of observe like, oh, which side is blocked. And depending on what you believe regarding like energy, they say the right side of the body is the feminine side, the left side is the masculine side. Sorry, the opposite. Left side is feminine, right side is masculine. And so if you notice that like the left side is really hard to breathe through, then energetically there might be some sort of like you're stuck or it's just not flowing as freely. Again, that's one of those things that's pretty consistent in all sorts of Eastern medicine, but there's not, evidence. So, usually I like to check in with myself. And if I notice like the left side of my body is, I'm just not breathing, or I have a lot of injuries, then I'm like, okay, am I like putting myself in too much of a caregiver role? Am I giving more of myself than I have to offer? Just checking in those sorts of ways. It's more of just a self-reflection tool.
I was definitely feeling my masculine side then, because I could breathe through my right side better. And then I started getting congested and I started mouth breathing.
Oh, interesting.
And and then I got all out of whack. But in the beginning, I was doing fine. And then all of a sudden, I was in my left side was more congested. And so I started mouth breathing and I got out of rhythm. And then I had to just stop and just do regular breathing, which, and that was fine.
That's fine too. Yeah. You can always stop. You can always like take a break, come back to it. You can switch between the breaths. These are all just tools to have in your toolbox. I find alternate nostril breathing to be very grounding. So like this morning I woke up and I had like a crazy anxious dream. I don't know why. But I woke up and I was just like frazzled. And so alternate nostril breathing is like a great way to just center yourself in that moment. When you feel just kind of like all over the place, there's something very grounding about alternate nostril breathing. So the last breath I'm going to show you is called bee breath. And it's really silly. Kids love it. Some older patients love it. I really like it. It's all about the vibration. So what you do is you put your thumbs in your ears and you put your ring finger under your eye and your middle finger over, and then your pinky and your pointer just rest. And you're going to block your ears with your thumbs, and then you're going to buzz like a bee. So it's going to sound like this. But because you're blocking your ear, you feel the vibration through your face. So nobody's judging you, just start buzzing. And do that about 5 times and just notice. And you're all muted, so I can't even hear you buzz.
You hear my dog howling now?
Buzzing too? So I like that all of you have big smiles on while you're doing this. So if nothing else, it makes you happy.
I wish you could see the look on my cat's face. And it cracks me up because, as Brittany knows, I have a bee phobia. So doing the bee thing is making me laugh too, because, so yes, it brought joy to me.
Good. Brittany, I saw you laughing over there too.
Yeah, I was just making sure I was on mute. Yeah, okay. Well, I think because I was like, am I supposed to be vibrating my lips? Like, I mean, that's what I was doing.
Mine usually starts with vibration and then turns into like not vibration, but it's about the vibration in your cheeks. So whatever is going to make you feel that vibration the most.
Yeah.
But so this breath is really fun because it's grounding and it's calming, but it's also kind of uplifting at the same time. Like it's almost just so silly that you have to smile. And so I use this one if I need like a little bit of a pick me up. This one's a little harder to just use in any setting. You know, you kind of get to go hide in the back of the office or something, but you know, you could just teach all your coworkers and then you can all buzz together.
So Amber, next week during midterms, you can be sitting there taking your exam and
yeah, my dog immediately started howling, so I just could not stop laughing.
Yeah, this is actually my favorite breath. It's not as functional in everyday life as like the in for 4, out for 6 belly breath, but it definitely, like, no matter where you are, what's going on, it's going to make your day a little brighter. So this is a great one after a hard day. You know, do it at a red light on the way home or something. So any questions at all about breathing, about the breath, or how it affects the nervous system?
So as far as application with patients, which I'm assuming you're probably going to get there, but like this would just be, hey, they're having a hard time. Maybe they have a lot of pain. Maybe you notice they're anxious. So I could just use this as another tool for, instead of go grab your Percocet, it's like, well, why don't we try this, you know, mindfulness using this breathing technique? Yes.
Yeah. So I really like using breathing with my kids to get them calm at the beginning of a session. So like we'll start every session with some deep breaths. When I was in neuro, I used it a lot for pain management. If people were just like, I'm just in so much pain, I can't get out of bed, I can't do anything, we would focus on breathing. And then the mindfulness strategies that we're going to get to in a little bit in conjunction with the breathing. But a lot of times when people are feeling pain, then they trigger that emotion as well of the panic or the anxiety. So being able to calm their body is going to also improve their pain. And really, like, you can just use breathing with exercises as well. If there's an exercise that's really hard for them, having them focus on their breath while they're doing the exercise, take some of the stress off of them of like, I have to do this exercise perfect. And they will probably function better if they're breathing correctly. So I usually use breath with adults in conjunction with the mindfulness practices, the visualization ones, but you can just use it alone as well. So just because I was talking about them, I'm going to go to visualization and then I'm going to go back to movement. But visualization is what we were talking about in terms of like concentration. So I always call these guided meditations with patients, but they're more of like a visualization exercise, or they're concentrating on something, they're not emptying their mind. So my favorite one is called a color visualization. And what I have people do before we even start is we pick what color represents what you need. So for this example, we'll use calmness and stress. So we're looking for calmness, we're looking for groundedness. What color is that for you? So I'm going to use blue in this example because that seems to be the most universal. But if If there's a different color that speaks to you, please feel free to ignore when I say blue and insert your color. And then for stress or pain, I use the color red. But again, if there's a different color that works for you, please use that. So we're just going to do a quick example. So I want you to close your eyes and go into that 4x6 breathing. So breathe in and exhale. Inhale and exhale. And as you inhale, visualize the color blue spreading throughout your whole body, from the crown of the head to the tips of the fingers and the toes, bringing a sense of calmness and groundedness to the body. And as you exhale, visualize the color red leaving the body, being pulled from every cell, bringing with it any pain or stress or anger, any emotion that's not serving you in this moment. Inhaling a sense of calmness, exhaling stress. Seeing the color blue spread through your whole body. And exhaling any pain, anger, stress, anything that's not serving you. Visualizing that blue color spreading through every muscle, through every bone, maybe even spreading outside of the body, creating a bubble around you, spreading throughout the room, to your loved ones, a wave of calmness. And as you exhale, visualize the color red leaving the body, being pulled from the muscles, from the bones, from the joints, bringing with it anything that's not serving you. And while we're here, we're going to create an inner resource. Your inner resource is your safe space, a place where you can be completely relaxed, completely at ease. So in your mind, envision yourself standing in the middle of a place where you feel 100% safe. It can be somewhere that's real, somewhere imagined. It can be somewhere you're very familiar with, or it can be somewhere that you've been for only a moment. Wherever it is, picture yourself standing right in the center of this place and allow yourself to look around. Notice what's in front of you. Notice what's behind you. To the right and to the left. Notice what you smell in this place. Perhaps there's the familiar scent of your favorite meal or a cologne or perfume. Maybe there's the smell of flowers or fresh rain. Notice what you hear. Maybe there's birds chirping, leaves rustling, children laughing, or a familiar voice. Notice what you feel. Maybe you feel the sun on your face, sand or grass under your feet. Maybe you feel a familiar embrace, a warm blanket. Notice what you taste. Allowing all of your senses to turn on. Allowing yourself to truly exist in this memory. Notice who's there with you. And notice how your body feels in this moment. Allow yourself to hold on to the sensation, but release the image, knowing that this inner resource is available to you at any time that you need it. A safe place where you can escape even for a moment. And as you feel ready, allow your eyes to flutter open, holding on to this calm and grounded sensation. Allowing yourself to resume your wide awake state of being. So I'm obviously moving through things really quickly. Normally we would just breathe and do that color visualization for, 10 minutes. And I may throw in there, like, if they're working on specific things like pain management, I would tell them, inhale relaxation, exhale pain, inhale comfort, exhale pain. Like, I'd pair those words with the colors. Everyone really responds differently. Like, I'm a very visual person, so the image of the colors does everything for me. I know some people that are like, can't picture colors, doesn't work for me. And in that case, we'll use, the words, we'll use more specific, like, we're going to inhale calmness, we're going to exhale stress, we're going to inhale happiness, we're going to exhale fear. We'll find those opposites. But you can do that for as long or as short as you want, and really focusing on what it is that you need in that moment. So if it's for you and you're leaving a really stressful day of work, you can focus on really releasing the stress. If it's for a patient, what are they struggling with? Is it pain? Is it anxiety? Do they need to feel love? Like, what can we bring into their life to help them in that moment? And then the second thing that we did is called the inner resource. And it really is just a safe place that we can visualize and let ourselves go to anytime you just need a quick break from whatever's happening. And what's really interesting, I'm sure you guys have heard, but when we visualize things in our brain, especially if we focus on our senses and focus on like the sensations attached to that image, the same neural centers in the brain light up as if you were physically there, as if you were physically doing it. So you can do the same thing, like if you're working with a stroke patient and having them focus on using their arm, you can have them, visualize reaching and grabbing and pulling it back, and the same parts of their brain light up. So in this instance, where we're using that to calm ourselves, we can think of like, where is a place where I feel so safe, and let that image affect us in that same way. So those are just two different visualization techniques. In the PowerPoint, I included a couple more. Energy flow, like just visualizing energy moving through the body, and that's a really nice one for pain. And you can also have them do progressive muscle relaxation paired with the energy flow. So they visualize energy moving into their fingers and they hold on to it, and then they release it, and then they let it move into their arm, and they, engage all of their forearm muscles. So really just exploring like what's going to work best for you or for your patient, whoever you're doing this for, because we are all so different. Like, some people are so visual and some people are really auditory, and some people may want you to like touch them or have them touch themselves, like the energy is flowing and they can feel their hand moving. So there's all of these options, but these are all just like little tools for your tool bag. Does that make sense? Any questions about visualization?
And then with kids, do you feel like with the emotional regulation, I mean, they do pretty well with that too, I imagine.
It depends on their age. I have, some kids that are so wild and we're literally just focusing on the breathing. And I tell them like, breathe in calm and exhale. And, that's all we're focusing on. But with some of the older kids, progressive muscle relaxation is really nice. Or the color visualization. And for a lot of kids, they're just really disconnected from their bodies in general. Like they don't really know what their bodies are doing. And so this is a nice way to help them connect to their body. Any other questions? Okay. So the last thing that I'm going to talk about, I have so many things to talk about. We're just going to talk about movement because that's, probably the part of yoga people are most familiar with. So in yoga, there's 5 different types of movement. There are forward folds. So anytime that you're flexing at the hips. There's heart opener. So anytime you're opening, extending through the spine, pressing your chest out. Twists coming across the body. Lateral bends where you're lengthening one side and reaching over, and inversions. So anytime that your feet are above your heart. And each of those postures has an effect on us energetically. So heart openers tend to raise energy levels. So like if you've heard about that, the TED Talk where she talks about like doing your power stance before you go into an interview and like making yourself really big, it does increase your energy level. So if you're having a day where you're just having such a hard time getting out of bed, like you can just sit at the end of the bed like this, or like inhale and exhale and like just use that heart opening position. And they don't have to be big positions. So yes, there are big back bends that totally exist, but you don't need to do those to have the same effect. It's more about the intention. So if I'm doing a heart opener and I'm really trying to focus on lifting up my energy, I might visualize like a light shining out of my heart center that's spreading joy or uplifting energy or whatever to the room. And so it's about that focus. Twists are very balancing. So if you, again, like if you wake up and you just feel scattered, or if you're having a day where you just feel so disconnected from yourself, even just like sitting and like gently swaying side to side is really good for balancing you. Forward folds are very calming. So I do a lot of forward folds with patients. Sometimes I'll have them just sitting in their chair, just like hug their legs and lean forward. You can do a standing forward fold, which is literally just folding over. Or you can add them to any other posture. So like if I'm working with somebody on balance and endurance, we might do a lunge. And in that lunge, here, I'll do a lunge. Okay, so they might be in this lunge position, and I'll have them exhale and fold, and then inhale and rise up if their balance is good. And so that is a way of bringing this calming energy into a balancing task. Obviously, if they don't have good balance, give them chairs, and then they can still do this. So any posture can become any type of energy. So you can have them in chair pose and then they turn, and that's now a twist. You can have them in tree pose and they open their heart, and that's become a heart opener. So the really important thing I think with yoga or with movement is the focus. Why are they doing that? Are they doing it to work on their balance? Are they doing it to work on flexibility? Are you trying to increase their energy level? Are you trying to help them calm down? Do you want them to feel how to move with their breath? And so whatever your answer is to that question, there's a million ways to do that, but really conveying to them what it is you're focusing on. So I can't tell you how many people come to a class and think like they need to be in the biggest back bend and they can't breathe at all because their body doesn't want to be there. And that's not what we're going for. Like I would so much rather see somebody just do this and breathe really well the whole time than do a big back bend. So I think taking the ego out of it is a big thing for most people. But like, if you have somebody who doesn't have great balance, is still working on their strength, but you want to do this, do it in a chair. Think about what is the goal. Like, do we want to have a lateral bend? Okay, you can have a lateral bend in a chair. Do you want them in a lunge position? I'm sitting on my little thing. You can have them in their chair, do this. So they're still in the lunge, even though you took the balance piece off, and then they can, lift their arms and be in their lunge. And they're getting from it what you want. And so for you, approaching it the same way, no expectations, no judgment. What do I want to get out of this today? If you have 5 minutes and you really want to focus on calming your body, can you do 5 minutes of breathing and gentle forward folds? Right? I know 2 of you said at the beginning that you need to do yoga and you want to add it to your life, but you haven't been able to. And I think that's because we have this all or nothing mentality in our society where like you have to go to an hour-long yoga class or you're not doing it right. And I 100% don't believe that. There are some days I do yoga every day, and there are some days that is 5 minutes, and there are some days where it's an hour and a half, and it just depends. How do I feel that day? What do I have time for? What does my schedule allow? But 5 minutes is going to be way better than nothing. So allowing yourself to do a little bit of movement, even if it's just laying on the ground and rocking your knees side to side to get those twisting motions in. Does that make sense? And I know that's a little bit hard. It's more abstract if you haven't really done yoga and you don't know like what poses are. But I also just feel like knowing those principles, like it doesn't need to be full lotus pose, right? Like it could literally just be sitting in your chair and twisting or forward folding. Or one I really love is you inhale and open your chest, and you exhale and round your back. And so you're moving with your breath, you're moving really slow, and you're just feeling that release. And that may help you, Joanne, with like pairing the breath and the movement, because then you'll think less about like, am I supposed to be breathing in right now? And it'll just kind of happen more naturally because you're like inhaling, and so your chest is getting bigger. And then you're exhaling and you're just pushing everything out of the body. So I am more than happy if you guys have any specific questions about like movement, how to do movement for yourself or for a patient or anything like that. I'm always open. If you want to reach out to me, I can help you come up with ideas. But I'm sure you want to get off this call in the near future. So I will leave that to, like, if you have any personal questions, please feel free to reach out.
I just like the permission that it's really just 5 minutes of doing like the open and the forward bending is yoga really. And I mean, I remember doing that with patients just to like if they've had a stroke or if they're, have kyphotic posture and working on opening for better breath and not even really thinking about that those are yoga poses. So yeah. I like it.
So you already do yoga. You didn't even know.
Right.
So I had a question because I know to be a yoga instructor, there's a lot of courses and just like, so as an OT practitioner or any therapist, really, if we're utilizing it, are there buzzwords that you use, or like, do you say therapeutic yoga, but you are an instructor? So like, what do us lay people have to do if we're going to utilize these strategies? Because I mean, I've seen mindfulness and all of that too, of like, well, I shouldn't lead someone in guided meditation because I don't know what I'm doing, but I understand some of these practices of the visualization and the in with the blue and out with the red, like that makes sense. Can I do that?
Yes, you can do that.
Yeah.
And what I always tell people is teach what you know. So if you don't know how to do advanced yoga postures, don't do advanced yoga postures. No. But like teach what you know and what you feel comfortable with. And I'm always here as a resource if you need more support. But when you're doing it with patients, again, just think about what is the purpose? Why are we doing this? What is the simplest version that I can give them? Because let's be honest, most patients are not going to do an extensive home program. But if you tell them, hey, wake up and do alternate nostril breathing for 2 minutes, they might do that. Maybe. But yeah, so then when you're documenting about it, I will occasionally use the names of postures just because they're universal. So like if I'm having somebody do down dog, for instance, which is 2 hands, 2 feet, bottom in the air, I will call it down dog because there's not a great other way to say it. But if we're doing, so like pointer is, one hand on the ground, one hand extended, and then the leg extended. And if I'm doing that, I may say engaged patient in asymmetrical balancing task to elicit core activation. Like, why did we do it? Because it doesn't matter to anybody what the name of that is. What matters is why we did it. And so if I can say like, we did this posture because we're working on bilateral coordination, integration, core activation, that's all they need to know in the documentation. So I wouldn't get too fixated on like, am I teaching yoga, but more of like, are we reaching that goal through the use of this modality?
That makes perfect sense.
That was one of my first questions when I first started doing it. I was like, how do I document this? Because like, will insurance pay? But really, it's not any different than doing lunges with somebody or doing a balancing task. It's just what was the goal behind it. And the thing that I really love about yoga for patients is it is very easy for them to continue it in the community. And so with HCPs, we often see that people don't do it because they don't want to work out in their house. It's not a way of getting involved with the community. It's not a way of meeting people. They're not motivated to do it. And so they don't. But if you start doing yoga with somebody in an inpatient or an outpatient setting, and then you say, hey, there's this beginner's class, or there's this adapted class or chair class or whatever, they have this through line to then be part of a community that already exists. And that is a really nice way to get them both reintegrating into the community after something like a stroke, or, if they just have a movement disorder or autism or whatever. And then it's also something that they'll likely be more willing to continue with because now it's a hobby.
And are you seeing, so Kalyn, I forgot, or I guess in case you didn't know, Kalyn's based out of Boise. Where I could see like something like Boise Parks and Rec having, which I don't know if they do, but they should, having something like, yoga specific to those with disabilities. Because what?
I don't know if Parks and Rec does, but the Y does.
The Y does. Okay, awesome. Because that's what, I think like if I were to tell one of my patients, here in Pocatello or something, like, oh, go to a yoga class, I would be worried for them if they weren't worried themselves on, like, is this, are they going to be the only one that's like, oh, can I do this from a chair? Because I can't get down on a mat. So I feel like there is an advantage of knowing who to refer to.
Yeah.
Super cool. Like Anna, and it'd be interesting, like in the assisted living facilities, what at least the home health agency that she works for, they have exercise programs on like, how could you integrate this? Because I just, as a provider in the community, I would need to do more research, at least in rural communities, on are there specific classes for those that have been graded to adapt to someone with more of a disability.
Yeah. And I don't know Pocatello. While you were talking, I just Googled yoga studios in Pocatello, and it looks like there's only 2. Or maybe there's a couple, but so there's not many. Something you could do is just reach out to the studios and say like, hey, is there anybody here who has done extra training in adapted yoga, or like, do you offer a chair class? But also with everything being online at this point, that's actually kind of been a bonus. So I do adapted yoga, and I can always do it over Zoom if somebody has like a caretaker that could be with them, or just somebody that can be with them to make sure they're not going to fall over. There's plenty of other like yoga therapists out there. So if somebody, is looking online, they can find a yoga therapist and connect. Yoga therapy is kind of an interesting thing at this point. When I did my training, it was pre-IAYT. So there's now the International Association of Yoga Therapists, and it's actually a 10,000 hour training. 1,000 hours. But it's essentially the length of a master's degree. But there's not like they have to create their own teaching opportunities generally. So most people who are yoga therapists you can find online, and they will do like, either they'll have courses or they'll have videos, or they can do in person. I do things on Zoom, or if they're in Boise, I do things in person. But yeah, just finding the right fit for the person, I think, is the big thing. But there are studios that have chair classes. So
yeah. And so for you to be a yoga therapist, is that like if I were to see you for yoga therapy, am I billing my medical insurance? Are you billing OT?
I personally don't take insurance for yoga therapy. That is part of my nonprofit. And so everything's offered on a sliding scale. There are very likely yoga therapists who are also PTs or OTs and then do charge insurance. But that would be something that they had to go through the hoops to get put in place.
So it would be like your specialty outpatient program.
Yeah.
But I'm utilizing therapy. So I'm still the OT.
Yes.
Just specifically doing yoga therapy.
Yeah. And for you guys, like you don't need to be a yoga therapist to use yoga as a modality within your practice. So you're already OTs or CODAs, and then you're just, offering this tool to people, and you don't need a specialty certification. I would recommend, if it's something you're like excited about and really like using, looking into either just doing more trainings or just going to a ton of classes so you have a practice. There's teacher trainings, there's all sorts of options. So I would say, like, if that's something you're like, hey, this is great, I'm seeing that it really works for my patients, I want to learn more, like definitely pursue more education in it. But you don't need to go do the 1,000-hour yoga therapist training. You're already a therapist. Do you have any questions? Is there anything that you're like, this doesn't make sense, or this feels weird, or?
I've just been trying to think. I do home health, and so I've been trying to think how to get the buy-in of my patients who are mostly like 75 and older.
I mean, if you have goals for things like balance, coordination, you can just, say like, well, we can lift weights or we can do yoga, and that might just be enough. You could tell them they can invite a friend, and then they can do it together, especially if it's chair, and you don't have to like worry about how their friend is doing over there in the chair. Just sneaking it in a little bit. So if it's somebody that's like an emotional regulation type person, just bringing the breathing in and like, gently cueing it, and then being like, hey, did that make you feel better? Do you want to try this like more extensive version of it? I tend to find the people who are skeptical after we start, they're usually pretty invested. I've never had anybody be like, I never want to do that again. And people are pretty vocal. So yeah, I think just like convincing them to at least give it a try, even if it's 5 minutes, and then they'll usually be like, oh, that was more pleasant than I expected.
There you go, Amber. When you guys get to fit and fall proof classes in phys dis, maybe that is something to trial.
Yeah.
I look forward to it. See what we can do, Anna.
Unfortunately, it might have to be on your classmates, because I don't think anyone will let us in, but
maybe Quinn would.
I don't know. They're not even returning calls right now, so.
We should just get a group of our parents. hey mom, you want to come do yoga? No, not to fall.
I have a couple neighbors.
That's a
There we
thought.
go.
That's a thought.
Just recruit all.
Volunteer.
Well, I might fit that category too. So
It would be interesting on how can we utilize Zoom. Like maybe we can help Kalyn in one of her classes via Zoom. Well, I mean, that would be hard, but
I don't have any big classes at this point.
yeah.
Everything for the nonprofit is also on hold because COVID.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Zoom is a great tool. The big thing with Zoom with this type of stuff is you just want to reduce any risks. So like if I'm in person, I would give them chairs to hold on to and then I would still spot. But since I can't spot on Zoom, we'll do everything in a chair. Like I won't even have them have the balancing component unless there's like a caregiver who I trust to catch them if they fall over. But like I said, it doesn't matter whether you're doing a lunge with your knee straight or with your knee on the ground or just sitting in a chair in a lunge-like position. It's still hitting the same purpose. Obviously, if your goal is balance, then it's not getting that purpose, but all the rest of it, the energetics, the body awareness, it's the same. So I didn't even get to talk about interoception. It's okay. I have so much to talk about. But yeah, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to shoot me a message if I can help you with patients or with anything. I'm always here. I'm super passionate about this, so you're not bothering me if you message me. I know people are like, I don't want to message or I don't want to bother you. And I'm like, no, I love this. I can talk about it forever.
Your website is www.upwardinertia.com.
Mm-hmm.
Where, I mean, you should really check out if you're into this stuff. Like Kalyn's doing some cool things with her nonprofit where do you want to just speak to like a couple of the areas or just the highlights of what you've been trying to get off the ground? And obviously COVID has
we had so much momentum pre-COVID. It's breaking my heart a little bit. But so I started this nonprofit 2.5 years ago, and I developed a curriculum with a professor from BSU. He's the president of my board, and he's the research partner. But so I created this whole curriculum. It can be anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks. And we focus on all of the things that we talked about today. We talk about interoception. We talk about things like goal setting. What is your blueprint? So how do we identify like our own habits and patterns, and how do we change those? And every class is 2 hours. We do discussion for the first 45 minutes-ish. And then we do breathing, mindfulness, meditation, movement. And the goal is really to empower all the students to use these tools outside of the classroom. So great if you go to a good yoga class and you feel good, but if you can't use it in your personal life, that doesn't really help. So my goal is to give people these tools of like, oh, I noticed that I started squeezing my hands and my chest is getting tight and my heartbeat is getting faster. And that must mean I'm getting angry. So I'm going to take some deep breaths, which, feels like something you should just know, but most people really don't. So my work has been primarily within the prison system. And then I was also beginning to offer classes for people on probation and parole, people managing addiction, mental illness. And then during the pandemic, it was really fun. I launched a class at the Medical University of South Carolina for OT students. And I'm really trying to expand that to other med programs, just because I feel like, especially as allied health professionals, like I'm sure doctors as well, but OT, PT, speech, like we are just in there with patients as they're dealing with trauma, as they're navigating the new normal for them. And so much of that we take on. And so giving healthcare providers tools to avoid burnout, I think is really important. And then of course you can also use those tools with your patients. So it's like multifaceted, but yeah, so that is what my nonprofit is. And then I do also one-on-one if there's somebody who's like, hey, I can't make it to class, or I have a medical condition and don't feel comfortable in a class, I want to do something more modified, then we can also do one-on-one. So that's my nonprofit.
Well, very cool. I'm super excited, and I appreciate your time, Kalyn. And thanks for all of you guys who came tonight. And mark your calendars for, generally we're on Monday nights, but we had a Thursday night this month. But next month, I believe it's Monday, November 1st. So look for our announcements because we will be here next month.